this course. The course title is Methods of Teaching Chemistry, and the code is ESC209. This course is designed by experts to equip you with the basic skills that you need to become a very effective chemistry teacher. Whenever we hear of the classroom, there is one thing that comes to mind: teaching and learning. So Unit 1 of this course is going to look at learning theories and principles. In it, we'll be looking at what teaching is about, what learning too is about. This very session is looking at definition of teaching, learning theories, and the behaviorist theory of learning. Our objectives are to distinguish between teaching and learning, define learning theory, state the three basic assumptions of the behaviorist theory of learning, distinguish between classical and operant conditioning, and finally state the implications of the behaviorist theory of learning to the chemistry teacher. So let's get started with our first objective. That is to distinguish between teaching and learning. We have heard of teaching, and we do hear of it. But have you asked yourself what teaching is about? Well, it's the process of carrying out activities that provide students with experiences that can cause learning. So, anybody who calls himself a teacher, what does he do? He gives out instructions. He gives out experiences to his learners. Why is he doing that? He is doing that in order to cause learning to take place in his students. Now, teaching, we should take note that does not only occur in the classroom as well as learning. As a teacher, you have taught. What do you expect? You expect learning to take place. What then is learning? Now, learning is a process by which students acquire and retain knowledge, skills, attitudes, understanding, and capabilities that cannot be associated with inherited behavior patterns or physical growth. Physical growth. Naturally, there are certain things that you can do. There are certain things that you would understand better as you grow. That is part of the growth process, and we cannot say learning has taken place in such case. You may have inherited a certain behavior, and that is not learning. You may take drugs, and by the virtue of that, you would be able to perform various activities. You would be able to demonstrate certain skills and a whole lot. But learning has not taken place by this definition. Why? Because for learning to take place, then you should acquire and retain. So if it's a skill, you should acquire and retain that skill. So that is it about teaching and learning. We teach, we want learning to take place. Now, knowing teaching, knowing learning, we require a framework upon which to fit the teaching and learning. And by this, we are talking about learning theory, which is a proven, accepted, and unified set of related principles and knowledge that provides the framework for describing the process that characterizes how individuals acquire knowledge and skills. Interestingly, there are a number of learning theories, and we are going to look at a number of them. In this very session, we'll be looking at the behaviorist theory of learning. And in the other sessions, we will be looking at constructivist theory of learning. We'll be looking at the cognitive developmental theory of learning, the cognitivist situated theory of learning, the cognitivist styles theory of learning, and finally, the information processing theory of learning. So what is the behaviorist theory of learning about? It is about stimulus response learning, where the teacher provides the stimulus, the student responds to the stimulus, and in the end, we expect to see a permanent change in the behavior of the learner. So, to the behaviorist, learning is a permanent and observable change in behavior caused by response to external stimuli. So you provide a stimuli and students respond to it. And then you want to see a permanent change in the behavior. By this, we mean that if you say you have taught the students how to, or you've taught the students to prepare a salt, then it shouldn't be something that they can only describe, or it shouldn't be something that they can only have in mind, but it should be something that they can do. So we are going to say learning has taken place when the student actually prepares the salt. Then we can say learning has taken place, and that is resulting from the experiences that you gave, the stimuli that you gave. So what is the stimuli about? Now, stimuli, we can say that they are the factors that cause an individual to act, or the external or the environmental agent that acts on a person to cause him or her to respond. So, whenever you provide the experience, you want your student to respond to it, and the end product is you seeing a change in the behavior of the learner. The learner now being able to demonstrate a certain behavior, and for this, according to the behaviorist theory, learning has taken place. Behaviorism is an umbrella under which we can have other theories. Interestingly, any other theory that goes by behaviorism, there are some basic assumptions that theory should believe in. And these assumptions are three. One is that the observable behavior rather than external mental events or verbal reconstruction of events should be the focus of study. We want to see a change in the behavior, something that we can observe, not something that is in the mind of the learner. Second, behavior should be studied in terms of its simplest elements. And third, the process of learning is behavioral change. Okay, so with this third point, what we mean is that if you say when you take a cane to class, then students remain silent throughout the class, in this case, we are associating a particular response to a particular stimulus. There shouldn't be a case where you now go to class with the same cane and students are all over jubilating, jumping here and there. That is what the assumption is about. A particular response is associated with a particular stimulus and occurs in the presence of that stimulus. Behaviorism identifies three stimuli. It identifies two stimuli. What are they? Classical conditioning and operant conditioning. Classical conditioning has got to do with a natural reflex response to the stimulus. A typical example is providing a prior idea to students. The operant conditioning has got to do with response to reinforced stimulus. For example, you, the teacher, giving reward or punishment to cause learning to take place. Now, in most cases, when we hear of punishment, we think about inflicting pain on the students. However, that is not punishment. Have you thought of you rather removing something that is hard for the students, taking away something that rather inflicts pain on the students away as a means of helping the students to learn? Okay, so on that note, I would encourage you to read more on the classical conditioning and the operant conditioning. And as a chemistry teacher, you would need to combine these two stimuli to cause effective learning in your students. At a point, you would need to use reward and punishment to modify the behavior of your students. And at another point, you may have to provide prior ideas for learning to take place in your students. Knowing behaviorism to this point, if you are the type of teacher who goes by this theory or who would go by this theory, then what should you do for learning to take place according to this theory? One is that you should provide activity-oriented learning. Why? It's simple. Passive learning is not productive. Even putting that part aside, we have said that for behaviorism, we want to see a change in the behavior of the learner. So if you just go to class and then it is about something that they would, activities that they would undertake mentally, then how do we see that change in the behavior? So for learning to take place, make sure that you provide activity, you provide the experiences where learners will actually take part. They will do it. Okay, and that will cause effective learning to take place. Interestingly, when you go to class and you make your student passive, and so you go there and you only go and give the information to them, you only go and you do your thing and you leave. The interesting thing is that you leave with everything that you brought into the class. You go and no learning has taken place. They only observe, sit and watch you. When you go, that is all. So provide activity-oriented learning. As a chemistry teacher by behaviorism, you should support the learning process with instructional materials. Already, some students are coming to your class with misconceptions. And here is the case, you only also come and talk about abstract things and then you go. Try to come with materials to support the teaching and learning process. And even in the selection of such materials, make sure you go in for those ones that are very interesting or that would be interesting to the students. That will cause learning to take place. You should provide repetition and frequent practice of learned knowledge. At a point, you should allow your student to repeat or to be repeating and also provide the avenue for your student to practice what they have learned. In that case, it is going to stick into their memory for a longer time. You should use positive reinforcements, rewards, and feedbacks to motivate students in learning. Don't only think about something that will cause pain to the students. No, that should be out of the case. Reward your students when necessary. It works a lot. When you reward a student for giving out a positive response, that is going to ginger your student. It's going to motivate him or her to be giving responses almost anytime you put a question across. You should state clear and observable instructional objectives. For those instructional objectives, other sessions are going to look at it into details, and that is going to help you a lot. Interestingly, that is where we are ending this session. But I'm not just leaving you, I'm leaving you with these questions. Please try your hands on them, and let's meet again in the next session. My name is Robert Chumesikuma. Thank you very much.